Some of you may remember that in 2012, when I was elected, I made a commitment to make sure that the state of California had an interest and a commitment to ethnic studies. In 2013, we authored the first piece of legislation calling for a commitment to ethnic studies and the value of ethnic studies and Africana studies in particular to the state of California. That this was the birthplace of the first Black Studies program at San Francisco State, and that it spread across the nation. Initially, people thinking that it would not last, and it remained in place for over 40 years, bringing together scholars and students to address some of the critical issues we face in this nation. And that California needed to be proud of the fact that it was the home of ethnic studies, and therefore should be the #1 state to invest in it.
We argue by definition that a quality education is a multicultural education. It was our contention early in the 60s that you can't have a relevant education teaching about 1/8 of the world's population and pretend the other 7/8 does not exist. That in fact, ethnic studies has a very important role to play. We started with Black studies, of course, but after that, Native American studies, Chicano, Latino studies, Asian studies are very important for us. #1, to give humanity a wider and more complete understanding of itself. It is a contribution also to society, understanding itself from a critical perspective rather than a self-congratulatory perspective. Because before the 60s, white studies had become one long self-congratulatory narrative about what Europeans had done. So what our intervention was to change that around and help the university to recognize and play its role of teaching the whole truth rather than a truncated part of it, which was incorrect and impartial.
California Faculty Association has issued a paper, Equity Interrupted, How California is Cheating Its Future. A data-driven paper that clearly shows how the majority of students in our system now are students of color. What is so important about that is that the funding to the CSU is no longer what it used to be. And additionally, we're having to respond to this task force and what it's doing, what its recommendations are and what the CSU is going to do about it, in a time when the majority of students are students of color and ethnic studies is marginalized in the CSU. We have a lot of people who say it's great. They say diversity is great. But there is really not much happening at the campus level, even since the report has been issued. We are in a state where you cannot do any business with anybody if you do not know their cultural history, their cultural perspective, and ethnic studies will allow us to do this on our campuses in any area, so that we are no longer producing graduates who are really culturally incompetent. I want us to make ethnic studies central to what we do. We need to let the citizens and the people of California know that now is the time in history when ethnic studies will no longer be marginalized. All the disciplines in ethnic studies are over 40 years old, and yet we still have to fight for every little crumb we get, and that is about time to stop.
Basically, what I'm hearing is that our report has been a good report, thorough report, but not necessarily one well taken on many campuses or implemented.
I do want to address the issue that is raised in the report of the war of attrition on ethnic studies. I want to underscore the fact that what's happened over many years is that we just simply haven't had the hires. When I came to East Bay, there were 3 full-time professors of African American Studies at East Bay. Since 2009, I've been the only one. As of this week, I have finally hired a Black feminist scholar after a couple of years of struggle getting that done. And just to speak to this, I know there was a comment, maybe I heard it wrong, in the first panel about the amount of qualified hires out of there. When I searched for a position for a Black feminist, I received 97 applications for that position. There are people out there who can do this work.
If it was not for Pan-African Studies, like you said, prior to the whole discussion, there were many students who would have dropped out. I would have been one of those students. I entered Cal State LA as a transfer student as a sociology major. Being only 4% of black students on the campus, that doesn't even mirror in those classroom settings. Most times I was in a soc class, and I went into sociology thinking it's gonna be diverse. It's sociology. No, I'm one of maybe two in the classroom. And so it wasn't until I entered the space of Pan-African studies that I actually felt home. You mentioned a lack of sense of identity, sense of community being on campus, and not really necessarily understanding where to go when you are there. And many times, especially students of color, black students in particular, we're lost when we enter campus. We don't know where to go. We don't see anybody that looks like a victim. My brother was killed this January by police in Vallejo, California. And so if it wasn't for Pan-African Studies, they have definitely been my backbone, my strength in everything that I do. And I know if I was in a different department, I would not receive the support that I do. They send me home on my flight, they feed me, they make sure that everything I need is, I was supposed to go back to work, and Dr. Abdullah told me, no, how much money do you need? And so it's things like that that keep me grounded in ethnic studies and Pan-African studies, to where I know I found a home.